Hey guys, Ash here from C4eTech, and I've been spending quite a bit of time with the new iPhone 16 Pro Max. Now in today's video, I'm going to walk you through what I feel about Apple's latest flagship. The iPhone 16 Pro Max, it's a very familiar phone. It's got the same Gorilla Glass back with a matte finish, the same titanium sides, the same ceramic shield front, and even the same camera array design. Then there's the IP68 rating, and when you look at the colors, where Apple went with some very fresh color options for the standard iPhones, the Pros, they didn't really get all that much. Desert Titanium is pretty nice, but I'd have loved to see fresher color options here. Now there are changes, yes, subtle ones. For example, the new ceramic shield, it's supposed to be even tougher, but forget that. What's underneath? Now that's more interesting. The screen size, it's finally gone up at 6.9 inches, but the overall footprint, it still remains more or less the same. Now this is the iPhone 15 Pro Max in an iPhone 16 Pro Max's case. It's not identical. The new phone, it's 6 grams heavier, about 3 millimeters taller and almost a millimeter wider. More importantly, the bezels, they've been shaved off quite a lot. So now the media viewing experience, it's going to be a little more immersive. While we are on the topic of media consumption, this display, the resolution, it's been increased slightly to account for the increase in screen size. So the pixel density, that remains unchanged. It's still an LTPO OLED panel that's capable of 120Hz or ProMotion as Apple likes to call it. So basically it runs at 120Hz but can also drop all the way down to 1Hz as the situation demands. The panel remains very bright, so quite easy to use outdoors. Now there is support for Dolby Vision and HDR10, which coupled with that larger screen, the excellent speakers, it's a good combination. Now one thing I noticed in my time with the 16 Pro Max is that it doesn't drop brightness quite as easily as its predecessor when you're, say, gaming. Apple claims this is thanks to their internal design improvements with a new thermal substructure to handle the thermals better. Now when you are gaming or doing something on the phone, the 16 Pro Max can draw about 40 watts from the wall, but typically it draws about 30 watts, meaning you can charge it to 50% in about 38 minutes, and a full charge is gonna still take you about 2 hours. It is not very fast. The new MagSafe charger though, with that it can now do 25 watts wirelessly. This was actually more interesting to me because I like MagSafe and I also like camera control. Now this little button here, I've seen it get a lot of hate, and some of it I do agree with. I'm not saying no. Yes, the double tap sensitivity, it takes some getting used to. Yes, it is easier to make changes with the touchscreen than to slide around on camera control. Yes, it is only useful when you're shooting in landscape. But here's the very important but. Guys, I've always loved the two-stage shutter key. Like on Sony phones, that's something I've forever wanted to see other brands implement. Now, if you forget everything and just view this as a key to launch the camera and quickly shoot, it's pretty cool, isn't it? Everything else is just icing on the cake. Use it if you want to, ignore it if you don't. Personally, for me, outside of adjusting exposure at times or maybe a little zoom, I rarely use it for anything else. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a game changer or a feature you should buy this phone for or anything exaggerated like that. What I am saying is, it's a little more than a gimmick. It's something I see myself using. It's something when I move on to the next phone, I'm kinda gonna miss a little bit. And I like the fact that it exists because it also leaves me very excited at the potential possibilities of more Android phone makers following suit. Now, okay, let's get to the actual camera performance. As expected, images shot with the primary, they're very similar to the results we got from the 15 Pro Max. There's a lot of detail, the images, they look very natural, the color rendition is close to being true to life. 2x zoom, it gets you sensor crop images that still have plenty of detail. Now under low light, images looked very good. The highlights, they weren't blown out. There was still a solid level of detail in the shadows. Here's where I feel the new ISP on the 16 Pro Max helps better performance slightly. Now the 5x telephoto, it remains impressive too. The colors, they've been matched quite well to the primary. There's quite a bit of detail here. Even at 10x, the results very usable. Of course, it's not as good as native 10x, which some of the competition phones do offer. Now the new sensor this time, it's actually the ultra wide. It's another 48 megapixel sensor and very closely matches the colors to the other two. Of course, compared to the primary, there is some loss of detail, but for an ultra wide, it does really well. There's also autofocus here, so you can shoot macro shots like this. Now all three sensors, they support 4K 60 video recording, And the video, now this is where I feel Apple remains a leader. With stills, there are different Android phones that outdo Apple in one area or the other. But when it comes to video, the 16 Pro Max, it's definitely very good. To me, I see this as my go-to secondary video cam for this year. One thing worth noting is that with the primary sensor, we can even shoot 4K 120. And I love how Apple's implemented the slow-mo option right from the edit menu. I found it pretty intuitive and easy to use. Now talking about the edit menu, there's also noise cancellation options that you can select in post that use the data from the iPhone's other microphones to intelligently cancel noise. Now just look at this. See, I'm shooting this and I'm right next to the air conditioner that's pretty loud. And see what happens now. This is how it sounds when I'm standing right next to this super loud window AC. Additionally, you can also record ProRes video to an external drive, and these days there are MagSafe based external drives that are very comfortable from third-party manufacturers. But before all this, around the 15 Pro Max's launch, I kind of put this together, a 2230 NVMe in an enclosure with these suction thingies that I stuck on it that kind of sticks to the back, and I connected it using a couple of USB connectors. It's worked great for me. Now the selfie shooter, it remains unchanged, and just like last year, it's very good at what it does. Selfies have great detail, the skin tones are on point, and the dynamic range is pretty good. Edge detection for portraits are well implemented too, and you already saw the 4K 60 selfie footage when we were talking about the audio mixer. Now from a software perspective, the new iPhones, they're all running on iOS 18. I have a detailed video actually on what iOS 18 brings to the table. Now this is probably the biggest change from Apple this year. If you've not watched that video, I'll leave a card to it here, do check it out. Now of course the new Pro iPhone, it gets the new Pro Silicon. This time we have the A18 Pro, and for the first time since Apple started launching the Pros, all iPhones this year, they come with 8 gigs of RAM. This is probably due to a requirement for Apple Intelligence or something which they're going super heavy on this year. But we'll talk about Apple Intelligence in just a bit. As you can see, Apple's got a few AAA games ported over to iOS, and these games, they run best on the latest Pro model. Now CPU and GPU wise, this is not a huge upgrade. The new A18 Pro, it's about 10-15% faster than its predecessor with respect to both CPU and GPU performance. That said, the new chip, it seems quite efficient. The display size, as you saw, it's gone up slightly. The battery capacity has gone up too, but by about just 5%. In my experience, the battery life here, I'd say it's about 10% better than what I got on my 15 Pro Max. This is definitely one of my favorite phones with respect to battery. Now the actual big difference here though is with the 16-core neural engine, which Apple says should be 2x faster than the one on the 15 Pro Max for AI tasks. And AI is, well, you know what Tim Cook said at the launch event, right?
We are thrilled to introduce the first iPhones designed from the ground up for Apple Intelligence and its breakthrough capabilities.
Or I'm sure you've seen Apple's marketing talking all about this. So it's all about Apple Intelligence this time, which sadly is not available yet. I mean, I have the beta and it does do a few things, but the full Apple Intelligence experience is yet to be made available. So without that, what we have here is a very iterative upgrade over the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Slightly more performance, slightly larger display, slightly better cameras, with slightly better battery life at more or less the same asking price as its predecessor. Now, is the iPhone 16 Pro Max a darn good phone? Sure, if you're on a 13 Pro Max or an older iPhone and you want to upgrade, this is going to be a huge jump for you. But if you're on the 15 Pro Max, or maybe even the 14 Pro Max, this just doesn't bring a whole lot to the table that makes it a must-buy. And that's my take. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Ash out.